Welcome everyone. This is Questions for Quarantine. My name is T and welcome to the show. Today is day 4 of my 14-day quarantine. And today I'm very honored to welcome Dr. James McCabe, the story doctor and my personal friend for many, many years now. James has been studying at Oxford, won numerous prizes, have been working with very, very famous companies, large and small, whether it's Allianz or Siemens or Zuken from Japan. And today he will be joining me in some open questions. So welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you, T. So thanks very much for your time today, and I hope you're keeping well.
Yes, I am. So I mean, obviously, everyone is talking about Corona, and I don't know if you have been following up in Vietnam. You know, Vietnam was one of the countries where the Corona spread has been very well maintained, but just a couple of days ago, it went into an outbreak again. Mm-hmm. So everything is changing. The question I have for you, and to really want to learn about your insights and your point of view is, so many times we talk that change is the only constant in life. So what has actually really changed now? Isn't change the most normal thing? Shouldn't we be very open that a pandemic was bound to happen sometime?
Well, I suppose in answer to that, I can think of the American definition of the difference between a recession and depression. He said that a recession is when your neighbor loses his job, and a depression is when you lose your job. So people are okay with change as long as other people are doing it. But being changed upon directly and being forced to change is it's actually traumatic. And I mean, it's the whole history of the world, you know, and the people essentially resist change at all costs in the main. Even Samuel Johnson said that a change, even from worse to better, is challenging.
That's interesting. So do you think that we perceive this change in such a different way because it is really truly a global pandemic? It's not a thing in Asia or in some other part of the world, or like in Ebola when it was predominantly in Africa? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I suppose that in my opinion, the first real synchronized global event was the great financial crash of 12 years ago. I mean, you had global events before, like world wars, which actually weren't global. They were kind of very widespread, but they weren't completely global, and they weren't all happening exactly at the same time. Like in the Second World War, for example, the war in the Pacific in the East didn't start at the same time as the war in Europe. So I think that I think one of the great problems that people have during this period is they have no models. So yeah, it happened before in a weird way, maybe like in the Roman Empire or something, or the Black Death in medieval Europe, but they certainly don't have any models as regards how to manage, because our parents and grandparents, maybe the grandparents had some kind of experience during the war, but so we're not really sure how to behave in the main, you know, apart from being instructed how to behave.
But that's actually quite interesting. I mean, I can definitely sense what you say. You know, we don't know really how to behave, and we also see that the behavior is so totally different. You know, for example, before I came to Vietnam, you know, I had to do the COVID test. You know, I had to wear the mask and, you know, do the social distancing. And when you're here in Vietnam, sometimes it seems like a super overreaction where they're actually wearing a full body hazmat suit, which actually doesn't really help in some cases that much. But I do understand the perception on what it does. But when we talk, let's say, about change, you know, and especially in our realm of where we are working professionally, we hear a lot about that a digital transformation and all these other digitalization topics have been seen a much quicker accelerated rate of change. And my question, how do you see that? Has it really changed that much in the impact, or is it much more about talking or a different niche aspects? Or do you really see and feel that there has been a real change?
Well, certainly there has been. So if you stand back from what's happening, you can see that probably half of the economy is knocked out, and it tends to be the economy that's involved with physical assets. So the economy that's involved with metaphysical, I won't call them virtual or digital, I'll call them metaphysical because you can't you can't sense them. That economy is actually in places booming.
Mm.
And so, one of the great cliches I think of the current crisis is that we're all in it together and everyone's in the same boat. And it's completely untrue. There are people that are experiencing great advantage at the moment in a very strange way,
Right.
in a way that they didn't themselves even expect. So it's a great divider. It is a great crossroads, and I think it will put, especially democratic societies, under great pressure.
Mm. I think you are absolutely right. It would be very, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, it's very naive and arrogant at the same time to think that we are really in the same boat, because we actually do see that especially the weakest in the society are getting impacted much quicker and much severe than other people around the globe.
Yeah, I mean, even very roughly, the young, as in younger people that are just starting out on their education or career or whatever, they will suffer often proportionately far more, in terms they don't have anything to fall back on very often. They don't have property, they don't have assets or networks, for example. So,
Mm.
from that point of view, it's certainly I think accelerating automation on one hand, but on the other hand, it's accelerating the class structure, like comprehensively accelerating that. Yeah.
Mm. Maybe just to end up on a more positive, I hope to say, outlook into the future. What kind of stories do you think will be told coming forward? And it doesn't have to be just, let's say, a story in terms of a sense of literature, but
Yeah.
also maybe in terms
Yeah.
of the business stories. What do you feel might evolve from all of what we are going through?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think that the classic paradigm and the overused term is pivot. So sort of the meta narrative in people's private lives and in, enterprise lives is pivoting, and usually what they mean by that is that you just transfer as quickly as possible everything that you were doing in the physical plane into some virtual reality. So you used to be a public speaker and now everything's virtual all of a sudden, and that's pivoting. But pivoting will not be enough,
Mm.
because, for example, you can't just transfer the physical world into the digital plane. And so um, evolution is the overall motif. And evolution, the thing about evolution is not growth. Evolution is growth with, or growth through, being different. And it's the nature of that difference that's very challenging. And I think that one of the things that I believe for businesses is that businesses that are defined by being in one sector, like the car industry, banking, uh, they can't pivot anywhere. They have to actually evolve, and they have to become, if they don't become a platform software service, brand everywhere, like the big tech platforms, I think they're really going to struggle, and many of them won't survive. Yeah.
Mm. Very interesting. Well, that's actually already it for today's episode of Questions for Quarantine. These are only meant to be a little bit of a thought-provoking start as food for thought. Well, thanks a lot, James, for being here with us, for entertaining us during this time of quarantine. But as you said, we are now all sitting in the same boat. I should be very grateful, and I am, to be able to be in a hotel to wait my 14 days. And with that, I wish you all the best and safe and healthy. Thanks a lot, James.
Thank you. Take care. Have a nice day.
Thanks.